Tonight, government sets end of week deadline to restore all power generation plants as part of the country battles blackout from the Akosombo substation fire.
Given the situation, I've also directed the MD for the Electricity Company of Ghana to provide regular and timely updates to the public on areas that will be affected. We will not shirk responsibility. We will not deceive you.
We have more from the Energy Minister, who revealed the security agencies are probing possible criminality behind the fire that gutted Great Coast Akosombo substation and plunged the country into darkness.
I'm well aware that the security agencies are also conducting a parallel one, looking at possible culpability and criminality, and we'll be waiting for that investigation. And some people have talked about sabotage. Irrespective of your party, irrespective of your religion, irrespective of your tribe, you owe it a duty of care to Ghana.
We have all the details here on Top Story, brought to you by Telecel, Connecting Energies, Holy Insecticide Spray and Coil. Enjoy Holy Sleep, and also by Short Pension Trust. Into the future with you. Top Story is live on Joy 99.7 FM in Accra, Love 99.5 in Kumasi, ATL 100.5 in Cape Coast, and Radio Max in Takoradi, and several of our affiliates across the country. Tonight, government, through the Energy Minister, John Janapo, has given a weekend deadline for all power generation plants to be restored to ease the ongoing power crisis across the country. He revealed that 2 out of 6 generating units at the Akosombo substation are back online, appealing to Ghanaians to exercise patience while efforts continue to restore power switches destroyed by last Thursday's inferno. Across parts of the country, many are still sleeping in darkness. And, yesterday across social media, you could see people venting their anger with regards to the darkness they are enjoying. Now, several businesses are also grinding to a halt due to erratic power supply. According to the Energy Minister, John Jinapo, the crisis is in two folds. The fire that, crippled the Akosombo distribution subsystem and faulty transformers scattered across the country. He says engineers at GridCo have deployed novel technology to restore some of the damaged units at the switchyard, with more expected online in the coming days. And that's why he's given end of week to restore fully what has gone off.
Our peak demand is about 4,350, or say 4,400. So if you lose 1,000 megawatt, that's about 25% of the population instantly suffering or being without power. And so that's quite significant. But like I said, 2 units have been installed so far. The 3rd unit is on the way. And in terms of what you describe as timelines, I said the engineers have set an ambitious target that within this week they will restore. Transformer replacement, we have a first 3-month program. So in the next 3 months, we're going to do an emergency crash program of installing transformers. Then the next 6 months, we'll move into another phase. Then 1 year, we'll just be doing regular upgrades. And so in terms of specificity, when it comes to timeline, that is it.
So that is the Energy Minister there. Presidential Affairs Correspondent Maxwell Akbaba was at the press briefing at the Jubilee House and joins us now with some details. Maxwell, government has given a 2-week timeline for investigations into the fire and is not ruling out possible arson. What more can you tell us? Maxwell, do I have you? Okay, we'll try and bring on Maxwell Akbaba, who has been monitoring this particular presser by the minister, where he gave details as to what they're doing to restore power. And of course, he's revealed to us that they are not ruling out arson. We'll try and get you that. My colleague Michael Papani actually has been monitoring the presser. He joins me in studio with much more. Michael, now let's talk about the 2-week ultimatum that government is giving and the fact that they are not ruling out arson. What do we know on that?
So we know that it was a very big fire, unprecedented actually, in the words of the Energy Minister. He tells us that the incident is currently under investigation and he has a crack team of investigators, including people within the sector who are monitoring the situation. He's giving them 2 weeks to actually come down to the exact cause of this fire. He says that there's a possible criminality in there and that they will pursue it if they find it. But this team has 2 weeks to actually come up with the findings, and essentially saying also that they will not rule out arson. Although he doesn't want to preempt what the report says, he insists that they will not rule out anything until the committee in itself, in their final report, comes down to their own findings and then recommendations to the problem as well. So we can listen to the Energy Minister himself, John Gyasi, raise or give us that statement himself.
To get to the root cause of this incident, as Minister for the sector, I've constituted a technical team chaired by the Venerable Engineer Williams Amuna to conduct a thorough and independent investigation into the incident. They will focus on the technical issues and come up with a report in 2 weeks. I'm well aware that the security agencies are also conducting a parallel one, looking at possible culpability and criminality, and we'll be waiting for that investigation. But let me state, and some people have talked about sabotage, irrespective of your party, irrespective of your religion, irrespective of your tribe, you owe it a duty of care to Ghana to serve in the energy sector with diligence and with patriotism. If we find out that you are not doing so, irrespective of where you come from, we will deal with you. And I think you should encourage us to deal with the few ones or whoever may not be working in accordance with the ethics of the profession. It's not that we are doing politics, but let's ensure that the right thing is done. If you decide that you want to work in ECG, you have decided that you will give off your best. And so should that be.
So that is the Energy Minister. Let me bring in our Presidential Affairs Correspondent who was at this press. Maxwell, now he further addressed claims that the directive for the Gridco Managing Director to step aside is merely a face-saving tactic. Give us details of his response.
Yes. Bridge, you know that following that directive, there were some social media commentary that suggested, like you said, the move is merely face-saving, pointing out that the Gridco Managing Director was already due to retire in June and had been given a letter in February to proceed on leave in April. Now, responding to this, he clarified that the directive should not be confused with a routine leave. According to him, this is a ministerial directive which carries a different level of authority and finality. He stressed that unlike a normal leave, when the individual is returned, this decision is binding and not be complied with as issued.
Stepping aside of the Gridco MD, yes, I visited the site, I think on Friday. And after receiving the briefing, I was convinced that he needed to step aside. It's in his own interest. You just spoke about conspiracy theory, all kinds of speculations and accusations. In fact, it helps him that when he steps aside and we conduct an impartial investigation, and it's done without prejudice. If you look at my letter on Friday, I stated that without prejudice, I've directed as minister that he steps aside. That is different from taking your normal leave. This is not a normal leave. If it's a normal leave, you can choose to come back. It's a normal leave. We can recall you and say that forgo your leave because we need you, especially in this critical moment. This is a ministerial directive, and so shall it be.
So that's the John Gyasi there. He has also been talking about the fact that he's directed the MD of the Electricity Company of Ghana to issue a regular update to people, for people to get updated on what's happening. Over the period, people have been calling on government to be more open on what exactly is happening. Listen to John Gyasi addressing this matter of directing the ECG CEO to be given more updates to the public.
Given the situation, I've also directed the MD for the Electricity Company of Ghana to provide regular and timely updates to the public on areas that will be affected. We will not shirk responsibility. We would not deceive you. When I briefed the president told me to be honest and transparent. Yes, this unfortunate incident leaves a gap, and so it will affect some people. And so ECG, under the management of Engineer Julius Kwekwen, have been publishing regional updates. And in collaboration with the Ministry of Information, we're even going to make it more available for everybody to see what is happening. But because it is fluid, because it's not like the regular load shedding, where you are aware that for a foreseeable period of time, you cannot restore power, we cannot do weekly publications. In fact, engineers are working around the clock. Within this week, they are pushing to restore all the plants back online. And so we can only provide you with a very short interval period. Indeed, this morning, we published a schedule for 6 o'clock to 6 p.m. That's 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. This afternoon, they've had to review it because one more plant is come on with about 140 megawatt. And so we would not live in denial. When we face challenges, we will tell Ghanaians. We know that, like me, every Ghanaian wants to enjoy uninterruptible supply of power. But I also do know that Ghanaians also appreciate it when we have genuine challenges that is not caused by policy failure or intentional.
Now, we all do know that when it comes to Kumasi, they had a peculiar situation. The minister says something's being done about the situation in Kumasi, where some transformers were the cause of this, and that some solutions are being preferred.
But due to underinvestment over the years, this has resulted in overloads, low voltages, and recurring outages. Government is addressing this issue head on. As an immediate intervention, this month we have installed almost 200 transformers. This week, we intend to deploy another 140 of these transformers. In all, we seek to deploy 2,500 transformers to improve supply reliability and improve the voltages as well. To improve these voltages, high capacity transformers are being deployed at key primary supply stations. Already, we have done Adenta, and that can be verified. We've done Lashibi, that can be verified. Yesterday, we did Teshinungwa, that can be verified. Within this week, by close of week, we will move to Kumasi to tackle the Rage primary substation. These are big, big transformers. And we are moving away from the 20 kVAs to about 30 kVAs and above. And that tells you that we are really investing in the sector. But it takes a bit of time to realize the benefits of all the investments we are making. The Ghana Grid Company is also preparing to commence critical transmission reinforcement works in Kumasi in June. And what we've decided is that we should allow the World Cup to pass. After that, we'll zoom in to do the transmission works. We're also working on some distribution lines, and Avensis will move to Kumasi this very week to commence work on the distribution lines. To further strengthen the system in Kumasi, Senate Energy Limited is airlifting a critical component which is expected to arrive here tomorrow and will be transported to Kumasi to further strengthen the generation network in partnership with Gridco. And so let me assure you that we are confronting both immediate disruption and long-term structural weaknesses within the ECG and NETCO operational areas. We inherited a challenge, but we are determined to address that challenge, like we did with the fuel issue, with the generation issue, with the IPPs, and all the other hydra-headed problems that we encountered.
This is Top Story brought to you by Telecel, Holy Insecticide Spray and Coil, and also by Shield Pension Trust. Let's bring in Benjamin Boacho, who is the Executive Director for ASEP. Ben, I'm grateful to you for joining us here. Now, as a consumer and as someone with knowledge of the industry, listening to the sector minister's responses, where do they leave you?
Thanks, Sammy, for having me. I think there's been a lot of goodwill to try to address the problem, but I keep saying that the power sector is a system, and we need to always address the systemic problems that we have in the sector, much of which is technical attitudinal, and also the governance issues in there. I don't know how the resignation, or if you like, the dismissal of the MD really helps us to address the core issue, especially when it was known that he was going to go
on retirement.
On retirement. And in fact, those in the industry knew ahead of time that he had been asked to go.
In fact, today there's a letter from Great Co communicating him going on leave, and that Engineer Otra will be acting in his stead.
Yes, I think that is really the bottom line, because when we do that, it really douses the criticality of the issue and what we need to do to actually dig deeper. And I think that in these institutions, there are clear negligences that go beyond specific individuals. And I think that culture of getting people prepared and making sure that they deliver value to the Ghanaian is really what we really have to root out at this point. I struggle to believe that that infrastructure that wheels over 1,000 megawatts of power to Ghanaian consumers could actually go ablaze the way and manner in which it did. And this is an infrastructure that sits next or close to one of the biggest dams in Africa. It doesn't take much to build in the systems that actually avert this kind of inferno that we saw. It actually tells you that systemically there has been that deep negligence. I heard the minister say that nobody expected it. Of course, the minister wouldn't expect a fire in such a substation. But if you are an engineer, if you are a leader in that space, a manager, even a technician, I mean, you need to expect fire in that infrastructure for you to be able to put in place the necessary mitigations to be able to deal with it. And I'm hoping that the investigation that has been occasioned would actually bring out those who have been culpable, negligent over the years, and go deep down to make sure that it never happens. Again, we cannot keep having these kind of situations and then it become one of the stories. We do have these infernos once in a while in many other sectors, and we sort of forget about it. And I'm hoping that this will signal that people working for government, working for the public, can be accountable in the way they operate or function in their roles. If you look at the new systems that were built in Pokwase, in Kaswa, and the rest of it, you can clearly see the modern equipment that protects the infrastructure and prevents these kinds of fire outbreaks. Basic detectors, basic water systems, basic cameras that helps you detect fire and deal with it as quickly as possible. How could anybody not think of installing these systems in such a critical infrastructure all these years for us to get to the point where we have to get it gutted, and then we find ways to raise money, disrupt business activity, disrupt power supply across the country, and then we try to find ways to deal with it. And I'm hoping that it never happens again. Today is just a substation. We don't know where the scale of the negligence in other spaces that could actually bring some of these problems. And again, talking about engineering failures and our contention over the years, even when we engage the engineers, they'll tell you, oh, you are not an engineer and you are not supposed to be advising us or telling us what to do. But a lot of the decisions and failures, they are basically common sense decisions that we need to take to avert some of these situations. If you look at what Kumasi people are suffering today, when they started moving equipments, developing power plants and others in Kumasi, we told the government at the time that what we need is to deal with systemic issues. Let's map out all the problems in the Kumasi enclave and begin to prioritize them so that immediately we could address the challenges in the Kumasi enclave. And our priority was that we needed a backbone from Pokwasi to Amimaso to be able to wheel 330 kV power to Kumasi and then be able to smoothen the supply from Bui and stabilize the grid in that enclave. And then over time, we can plan to improve the system and make it much more robust. So you look at the most urgent infrastructure that you needed to put in place and make the system work and supply power to Kumasi. They said no, they wanted to build pipeline. They wanted to build new power plants. And as we speak today, there's a pipeline to Kumasi. There are power plants in Kumasi, and yet the problem hasn't been solved. And the basic things that we're recommending that we do, those are the things that we are now attempting to do or to invest in. Cumulatively, we're doing close to $2.5 billion of investment in pipelines and power plants that are not working and delivering value to the people in Kumasi. So we need to get back to the drawing board, plan the system challenges, and map out the critical ones that we have to deliver. Otherwise, this kind of announcements, we are doing this, we are building. I mean, for the past 5 years, we have been installing transformers. ECG has been installing transformers, and those have been the announcements.
So installing transformers is not the solution we need.
It's the solution.
Okay.
But the point is, I mean, you at one point, even PURC came out to say that the installation that ECG claimed they were doing was not credible. You get it? So it's almost as if we keep announcing what makes the public comfortable and forget about their misery, and then things are back where we were. So I think we need to really plan, determine how much investment we actually need in that space, and then we map out the critical things that we have to do and begin to deal with them. Otherwise, we keep pumping billions and billions and billions into the power sector, and we are not delivering the solutions that are actually optimal to help the consumer keep the lights on. And I mean, we always, all the time, having these conversations about when the doomsday will stop, when the power is going to be stable, when ordinarily, as a consumer, all you care is to switch on the light and it's working. All you care is to make sure that your equipment has the right voltage to actually work. But for the past decade, we have been engaging the politicians, the system managers, and the rest of it on how and when we're actually going to have the power stable. And it comes back to the systemic problems that I actually outlined, that we need to, one, hold people accountable for some of these negligences, and also make sure that engineers help us contextualize the solutions, help us address the most critical things, and not box everything into it, and then we keep pumping money and we're not getting the results that we actually need.
I'm grateful to you, Ben Boache, for joining us here. He is the Executive Director of the African Center for Energy Policy. Let me bring in Richmond Roxon, who is a spokesperson and Head of Communications for the Energy Ministry. Roxon, I'm sure you heard Benjamin Boache there, that it goes beyond, the solution is the transformer installation anyway, but we need to get to the drawing board and make sure we are dealing with the root cause of these issues. Is that what is happening currently to ensure that we don't encounter these problems again?
Good evening to you, and then good evening to your cherished listeners. I'm sure Mr. Bembashi himself will confirm that looking at where we took the power sector from and the work that has been done, there's been significant progress. And together with him and other well-meaning Ghanaians, we've been working tirelessly together with the minister to improve the sector. And so, yes, we recognize that it's not just about the wholesale review or reform, and that's what we are currently doing to ensure that we protect dealt with the fuel issues. Today we have more natural gas powering our thermal plant.
Well, Roxanne, but you see, for the consumer listening to us now, what he or she needs is for the power to stay on. And you say that you are making the things better, but when the consumer is sleeping in darkness and you say this, he or she is asking, what is he talking about?
No, the question you asked was my comment on Ben Boachi's commentary. And so that's where
I just use it as a hook. I want to know if those things, the things that will make us solve the problems permanently, are what are on the table now, and not just the knee jerk that we see always.
Oh yes, that's what we are doing, and then that's why I mentioned earlier that even before we had this unfortunate incident, which has affected our power generation, we had significantly improved the system. And then we're looking at the wholesale improvements of the infrastructure, obsolete materials that for several decades had not been dealt with. And so we rest assured that we'll work continuously to keep the lights on So far, 2 of the turbines have been turned on. They're working on the third one. Very, very soon, we'll ensure that the third one will come on board by close of weekend. Latest, that's the assurance the engineers have given us. By close of weekend, we'll have the entire Akosombo restored, and then we'll be able to continue the work that we're doing with injecting new infrastructure.
Okay.
Once we deal with that problem, our lives will be more stable than what it has been the last few.
Okay. Let me bring in Collins Adumakumensa. He's Deputy Ranking Member, Energy Committee. Collins, your committee is in charge of overseeing what the ministry does. They say they are fixing the problem. Is that what you see? What else should they do to fix the problem entirely for us?
Well, thank you for having me. Whether the problem has been fixed or not, I mean, consumers can attest to it. You just rightly put to my very good friend Roxanne that what the consumer is feeling now is not what we are being told by Roxanne that is being fixed. Day in, day out, we're having some power challenges. What I was excited about listening to the minister was his admission that there are challenges. For me, that is a very, very significant development because over the period, I've been listening to some other government communicators on other platforms who are just failing to admit that we have a challenge. Now, the admission then now paves the way for a more decent and frank and transparent discussion about the way forward. I am all for any process that is leading to an upgrade of infrastructure. And just as Mr. Bemboache indicated, changing transformers and upgrading infrastructure has been a very normal process within the sector. My government did it, and I'm sure that NDC one, especially John Dramani Mahama's first coming, also invested in some infrastructure. It turns out, if you look at or you read the Energy Commission's Energy Outlook report, it's clear that the consumption level keeps rising. And so any government that decides to improve on the infrastructure on the basis of the report that has been given out by the Energy Commission is in the right direction. All that government had to do was to communicate properly and situate the situation so Ghanaians are aware that between this period and this period, they are going to have some interruptions. Unfortunately, we didn't see that, and that is where the challenge has always been. Today, I listened to the minister who said that there was not going to be a long-term timetable. However, he's instructing ECG to give some short-term timetable, which is acceptable. Whether it is long-term or short-term, Ghanaians must know so we can plan ahead of time, because obviously the situation we are experiencing now is quite volatile.
Well, I'm grateful to you, Collins Adumakumensa, for joining us here, and thanks to you, Richmond Roxon, spokesperson for and head of communications for the Energy Ministry. Also to you, Ben Boache, for joining. Up next is Newsnight here on Joy.
Hello, welcome to Newsnight. Tonight, the Minerals Commission is turning up the heat on Adamus Resources Limited, threatening legal action against the mining firm and describing the company's operations as unlawful with severe environmental degradation across its mining concession.
Some are frustrated frustrated. They kept complaining that, Honorable, we don't have light to steady. The light comes on when we are asleep. And then by the time they wake up, the lights are off. I call on the president to urgently intervene for these kids.
Also coming up, we have details as the commission justifies government's decision to revoke the mining lease of the company, insisting the move was taken in the supreme interest of the nation.
Also, the power crisis is now hitting your taps as the Ghana Water Company Limited blames ongoing water shortages in parts of Tema and Accra on disruptions in the energy sector. Details as the nationwide power outages also affect students preparing for the BCE and the ongoing WASI.
Some are frustrated. They kept complaining that, Honorable, we don't have light to steady. The light comes on when we are asleep. And then by the time they wake up, the lights are off. I call on the president to urgently intervene for these kids.
Former Supreme Court Justice William Atuguba says the Office of the Special Prosecutor faces several legal hurdles before it can get full power to prosecute.
In law, there's the maxim delegatus non potest delegare. In other words, a delegate cannot sub-delegate his authority. But there is a complexity. What amounts to delegation?
In business,
business associations demand load-shedding timetable to plan for power outages. We hear from the Ghana National Chamber of Commerce and Industry.
And later in sports,
former Black Stars player Augustin Ahimfo criticizes Black Stars decision makers over Utuadu's exit.
More of these and many other stories coming up in the next 60 minutes. You can be a part of this show by sending us a WhatsApp on 055 11 11 997. I'm Kenneth. Gyasi.
My name is Gemma. Appiah.
Details after this.
There are many reasons to connect, and it's all to put smiles on the faces of those you love.
Daddy, thanks for the tea cash, okay? I love you.
That's my daughter, Angela.
Kojo, I mean, sure, why? Tea cash, I know Papa
Caring for my parents, that's my duty. I also get to pay my utility bills easily with Telecel Cash. And to the suppliers at my shop.
Hello, sir. Telecel Cash payment received right on time. Thank you.
I get to make them smile because I can pay to my suppliers' merchant numbers, even on other networks directly. My dear ones.
We keep the connection stronger when our family, friends, and business relations are happy. Live on cash, enjoy convenience, and make those who matter smile when you send them money with Telecel Cash.
Telecel, connecting energies.
Couldn't sleep at night. Mosquitoes will be whining my ears, bugging me all night long. Till I got a remedy. Now I'll be spraying them away with holy insecticide spray. I go spray them away with holy insecticide spray.
Very low eye.
When I sleep, me down with holy insecticide spray.
Holy mosquito coil, holy multi-purpose insecticide spray. Ghana Kron Kron. For bulk purchase, call 0302 681582. This advert is FDA approved.
Because the wet ones, not because we lack the water, but because the water never lets us go.
This May, in celebrating Arise 2026 International Justice Mission in partnership with Image Bureau, April Communications and the National Theatre presents The Wet Ones, a story of pain, ignorance, deception, mystery, and struggle. For one day only, catch this theatrical masterpiece on Saturday, 2nd May at 4 p.m. at the National Theatre. The Wet Ones. Register for your free invite at www.imagebureaugh.com or visit IJM Ghana on Facebook, IG, and X. The Wet Ones. Directed by Derek Sawano. Saturday, 2nd May at 4 p.m. only at the National Theatre. Supported by Niplan's Car Rentals, Graphic Communications Group, Joy FM, Hit FM, Joy Prime TV, and proudly brought to you by International Justice Mission.
Enjoy homemade taste of shito always with Didi Shito. Made with carefully selected ingredients, no preservatives, no colorants.
Preservative just helps us spice. That's how we taste. Spicy we eat.
Didi Shito, if you do need. advert is FDA approved.
Hello, excuse me. This Milo pack looks different. I'm seeing support energy release bum on the pack.
Yes, so the support energy release means when you give your kids Milo as part of breakfast, you are giving them energy to help them win at school.
Ah, then I like this one.
Your jams need nourishment and energy. Give them the Milo Energy at breakfast, now with vitamin D that supports energy release to help their daily performance. Milo, energy to go further. Milo. This advert is FDA approved.
Tonight, the Ghana Water Limited says blackouts are now causing dry taps. The company blames power supply instability for water shortages in parts of Accra and Tema after electricity cuts hit its treatment plants and booster stations. In a statement, the Ghana Water Limited identified the primary cause as instability in electricity supply to its water treatment plants and associated booster stations. We'll be hearing from Consumer Protection Agency shortly, but first, my colleague Maxwell Aklobo joins me in studio with details from the statement. Maxwell, what additional details does the statement provide?
Yeah, Gemma, so the statement explains that the main issue is unstable power supply to water treatment plants and booster stations, and this has disrupted production and distribution of water. Ghana Water Limited knows that the entire water system actually depends on constant electricity. So any little fluctuation immediately affects supply. It also highlights that heavy rains around Akosombo have increased the volume of aquatic weeds at the pond intake, further limiting water abstraction. And the net effect of all these combined constraints is intermittent and reduced water supply across several communities in the Tema and Accra regions, with restoration efforts actually underway. Gemma.
Thank you very much, Maxwell Aklobo, with those details from the statement by the Ghana Water Limited. Let's now go to the phone line and speak to Appiah Dumakon. He is the director of West Africa Regional Center for CATS International, Accra. Welcome to News 9. Now, first we have to deal with electricity cuts, and now the Ghana Water Limited is saying that there are some water supply issues within Accra and Tema because of the electricity problems. Is this fair to consumers?
Good evening, and good evening to your listeners of Joy 99.5. Sorry, 97.5. So I think the reasons given by the Ghana Water Company is not a tenable reason. Of course, we know that for those of us in Accra, no one gets water 24/7. I don't know area in Accra where the taps flow 24/7, and so this cannot be an excuse. If the Ghana Water Company has challenges, they should address it and not push everything to the ECG. Of course, we know that we all need, Ghana Water Company needs electricity from the ECG to be able to power its turbines. And this also brings the question as to what the ECG is doing. Of course, we are told that there's about 1,000 megawatt shortfall in the generational mix. And with this, ECG is supposed to give Ghanaians, and more importantly, Ghana Water Company, their times that the lights will be on so that they can also plan their operations around that. But keeping people in darkness and allowing the light to go off at will and whim, I think is not the best on the part of UCG.
PRC is the regulator here. How should they be addressing this double whammy?
Well, this afternoon I saw a news item that PRC is saying that there shouldn't be any timeline for any timetable for doing so, and that they will not accept it. I don't know what is happening. As of now, nobody knows what is actually wrong with the electricity in this country. Before what happened last Thursday evening at the Akosombo, the lights were not stable. And now this Akosombo issue has also come about. And PURC and ECG should be very truthful to Ghanaians and let us know the problem so that people can plan. Now, PURC is the regulator, and as a regulator, you have the right to demand a service provider to comply with certain regulatory things. And this is not the first time this thing has happened. Of course, because of how we have politicized electricity issue, in 2024, there was an issue like this, and government didn't come up with any timeline, any timetable for load shedding. And so nobody wants to come up with a timetable, because once you come up with a timetable, then it's a clear admission that there is doomsday or load shedding. But perhaps there could be a doomsday timetable that may be not occasion from anyone's, incompetence or whatever. What happened in Akosombo last Thursday was clearly an incident, and this thing can happen to every electricity generation. So I think that PURC needs to assert its independence and tell the operators that, look, do what is right within the laws and the regulations that have been given to you, than allowing Ghana Water Company to say what it wants to say and the ECGs also to do what it wants to do. No, this is not a PURC that the lawmakers, this is not the powers, the lawmakers have given the PURC more powers to do what they need to do.
Well, we heard from the energy minister today, who talked about the gravity of the fire incident and the fact that engineers are working tirelessly to ensure that plant continues to run. Is that not a good enough reason? I'm sure you heard the minister as well, those assurances that by the end of the week we should see some relief in terms of electricity supply.
Before what happened in Akosombo last Thursday, we were still going through some pockets of unannounced outages. I don't know to what extent will the Akosombo resolution of the issue that happened in Akosombo would bring millennium to our electricity generation. I think there's a problem that we need to be, that they have to tell us, or if there's a problem, they need to also let Ghanaians know, come up with your load shedding management, and also give us a timeline as to when you can fix it.
He talked about two major challenges: the fire incident at the Akosombo, and also technical challenges based on faulty transformers, which they are working on. You think there's more beyond the two major challenges he talked about?
The transformers were already working before end of March this year. All the transformers were working. Nowhere in Ghana did we hear people talking about power outages. As soon as they started touching the transformers, then we started seeing that the power have started going off. And you know that the solution that you are bringing should not be worse than the problem that you are trying to solve. If an existing transformer, which was giving people power, was not giving us any doomsday or any outages, and now because of we want to fix it, and that alone is giving us outages. And again, we know from the standard practice that work on transformer installation normally starts from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. Nobody installs a new transformer at midnight. But in the midnight, in the evening, or in the early wee hours of the day, we are still getting outages. And so what the minister is saying, I think that it doesn't clearly represent the whole truth. And I think Ghanaians desire to know what is actually happening.
As a consumer protection agency, what are expectations from these two utility companies, the ECG and Ghana Water Limited?
Well, we are not a government agency. We are a research and a policy think tank, and we would want to recommend to PURC to use the powers that have been given to PURC under the law to mandate the ECG to come up with working timelines in terms of how it's going to resolve the crisis. And in the short term, they should be able to compare them to come up with a load management. I mean, a load management schedule. I mean, coming up with a load management schedule is not an admission that you have done anything wrong. Anything can happen when we are running a whole nation electricity. and like what happened over the weekend in Akosombo. All those things nobody budgeted for. Nobody made provisions for it, but it has come. And when something like this comes, what do? You do load management. It's better for you to do a load management than to do irregular outages on and off and destroying people's gadgets and work schedule.
Thank you very much. Appiah Adomako is the director of West Africa Regional Center, CATS International, Ghana.
And still on the ongoing power crisis, students preparing for their BECE and WASI, which is currently ongoing, are unhappy about the power outages, stating its effects on their academics. The WASI candidates began their practicals last week, and the BECE candidates will start their exams on the 4th of May. The power outages, explained by the Minister for Energy, is due to transformer upgrades, among other works. Taking to his Facebook page to express his frustration, the MP for Akuapem North, Samia Uku, stated how candidates in his constituency have inundated him with calls and pleads for stable power to aid their preparation.
This year alone, a total of 2,100 pupils, 2,100, will be sitting for the BEC exams exactly a week from today. That's the 4th of May. Speaking to these young future leaders, some are frustrated. They kept complaining that, Honorable, we don't have light to study. The light comes on when we are asleep at dawn, and then by the time they wake up, the lights are off. The lights will come back around 4 p.m. and 6 p.m. it goes off. It's frustrating for them, and I'm scared for them. These kids may only have one shot at their BEC, and I don't think that the government is being sincere in handling these matters. And to make matters worse for me, I have special needs schools. With the way people drive up the hill, where am I heading? So I think that, look, apart from businesses struggling and really under pressure, I called on the president to urgently intervene for these kids. They have just a week to write their exams. WAEC doesn't care whether you have light or you don't have light. The exam starts. WAEC couldn't care whether you're able to study or not. The papers have been prepared, the questions have been set, and the examiners are ready. So please, using your medium today, we want the government, the president, and that of the energy minister and green transition to make do their promise of keeping the lights on.
That's Samia Uku there. He's the MP for Akuapem North constituency in the Eastern region. Let's get some updates from across other regions of the country and begin from the Western region, where our resident correspondent in Athalia, Kwansa, is standing by with the latest. In Athalia, how are the candidates making up for time lost? Unfortunately, we've lost in Athalia, Kwansa there. We'll try and reconnect with Athalia and go to the Ashanti region and other regions of the country to see how students are preparing for their examination amidst the doomsday we are experiencing.
The Minerals Commission is escalating its crackdown on Adamus Resources Limited, threatening legal action just hours after the company's mining lease was revoked by the Minister for Lands and Natural Resources. The latest move follows damning findings from an investigation by the Commission, which uncovered what it describes as widespread violations of Ghana's mining laws and extensive environmental damage within the company's concession. Addressing a press conference in Accra, Chief Executive Officer of the Commission, Isaac Tando, revealed that discussions are currently underway with the Attorney General's Department to initiate prosecution against the company's owners.
The Minerals Commission will not condone the abuse of mineral rights, the destruction of the environment, or the subversion of our laws under the disguise of investments. The use of foreign operators to conduct illegal mining under the cover of a lease. Companies that act with impunity, discard our regulatory authority, and endanger our land, water, and communities will face the full rigors of these same laws. The revocation of Adamus Resources Limited leases serves as a precedent. Illegality will not be disguised as investment. These revocations are without prejudice to criminal charges against Adamos Resources and its directors under the Act 995. The Commission will work with the AG to prosecute these perpetrators. The Commission will work with the Ministry to safeguard lawful jobs affected by this decision and will announce transitional measures in due course.
He further disclosed that the investigations uncovered what he termed systemic and flagrant breaches of the country's mining regulations, necessitating the immediate halt of operations.
Following a routine inspection and investigations conducted by the Inspectorate Division of the Commission, it was established that Adamos Resources unlawfully assigned portion of its mineral rights to third parties without prior ministerial consent, in direct breach of Section 14 of the Minerals and Mining Act 2006, Act 703. The investigations were supported by pictorial evidence and on-site inspection across multiple concessions operated by the company. The findings disclosed systematic and flagrant violation of Ghana's mining laws, prompting the Commission to recommend the revocation of the company's mining leases and the prosecution of the company and its directs under the Minerals and Mining Amendment Act 2019, Act 995. While Section 68, subsection 2 of the Act 703 and Regulation 200, subsection 3 of LI 2176 requires notice period to remedy breaches, immediate revocation is justified where the public interest and environmental protection demand agent action, or where the illegalities or breaches are found to be flagrant and deliberate.
Well, he also maintained that the decision to revoke the lease was taken strictly in the national interest, rejecting suggestions of political interference.
The Commission is of the considered view that the serious and deliberate violation of statutory and regulatory obligation by the company, as documented by the Chief Inspector of Mines, provide compelling and lawful grounds for the Honorable Minister to terminate the mining lease of Adamos Resources under Section 5, subsection 5 of Act 703, forthwith as has been done. Ladies and gentlemen of the press, this decision was neither arbitrary nor politically motivated. It was a lawful evidence-based action. It was lawful evidence-based action taken to protect Ghana's natural resources, environment, and public interest. It was a direct consequence of persistent violation of the country's minerals and mining regime by Adamos Resources Limited.
Let's go into the telephone lines right now and speak to Frank Asari. He's the Director of Minerals Titles at the Minerals Commission. Mr. Asari, welcome to the program. What environmental damage has been identified, and will the company be compelled to undertake restoration?
Good evening, and good evening to you, and good evening to your cherished listeners. Also, your reporters who came for the press conference would attest to the fact that we projected to them pictorial evidence of what has happened at these areas, both i.e. Akango and Salman, where they have cleared the place. They have started mountain areas where they are using as process area. They have, all these were done without recourse to the Environmental Protection Agency, without recourse to the Minerals Commission for operating permits. So these are evidence-based, and we showed all to your reporters who were there at the commission today.
And that is to say that they were engaged in illegal mining, otherwise known as galamsey. That means they should be dealt with by the law, shouldn't they?
So the laws are clear. When you are granted a mineral right, you hold it for a period, and in so doing, the time that you hold it, if you want to mortgage, assign, or do anything to another person, you need the express consent of the Minister for lands and natural resources as provided for in Section 14 of Act 703. That was not done. So the company that was assigned or was given that right to mine the area by Adamus was in violation of and it was in breach of our mining regime. However, the Chinese that were brought there were not mandated or are not mandated by law to be there in accordance to Section 99(5) of the Act 995, the Minerals and Mining Act as amended 2019. So the Minerals Commission is not seized with the power to prosecute. So that is why the CEO of the Minerals Commission posited that the Attorney General's Department will be notified and has been notified to take on with the prosecution. You know, this issue of authorization to prosecute, express authorization, and implied authorization. By law, Minerals Commission does not even have either the implied or the express authorization of the Attorney General to prosecute. So the issue about prosecution will be solely in the preserve of the Minister for Justice and Attorney General.
And beyond Adamus, are there other mining firms that you are seriously investigating who could possibly be breaching our laws just like Adamus has been found doing?
Yes. So inspection is an ongoing affair at the Minerals Commission. As the regulator, we have the Inspectorate Division, which does monthly, quarterly, and yearly inspection. And as and when there are issues that comes to our attention to investigate. So it is an ongoing process, and all other companies that have been granted mineral rights by the states that are going against our laws will be brought to book.
When I spoke to you earlier on TV, you did mention that Adamus was cautioned on several occasions. Has there ever been a case that some of these mining firms have also been found to be doing what is more similar to what Adamus did and have been cautioned?
Okay, so I mentioned to you that when you look at Section 68, 1 and 2, the import of that provision is that when any company is in breach of the provisions in there, you have to serve them notice. So in the past, breaches as repayment of amount that is due the state that has not been paid, they've been notified. And there are other companies that have received same notification from us. But for any company that will outsource to any third party to mine a portion of their mine that is in fragments with the laws of our country, the lease will be revoked as is done to Adamus.
Right, Frank Asari, thank you very much. He's the Director of Mineral Titles at the Minerals Commission. And some of the messages you've been sending to our WhatsApp platform, this one from Yao in Achimota. He says, it is a shame that John Jinapor is blaming everything but himself. This is a man who had the magic hand while in opposition, and now he has been reduced to storytelling. This one says, I just got home from work and we do not have light. This one also says NDC and John Mahama should listen. MPP and his agents are up in arms against them to ensure Dumso is back to use it as a campaign message for 2028. Yes, the minister has explained and will be explaining. He should blame himself. This could have been prevented if he had listened to calls that they were coming to him that the opposition is up to something bad to cripple the power sector, with the persistent calls by the MPP and his agents to remove the 1 Ghana cedi Dumso levy. This is happening in the power sector, and it should be a wake-up call to the road minister and national security. Our port bridges, and so on. This is Francis in Accra. This one says, Dear President Mahama, you are working so hard to restore Ghana's economy, but beware of some of the technocrats that are trying to sabotage your government promise in Keta. There are more messages you've been sending to our WhatsApp platform. In due course, we will be reading them to you. It's now time for business, and Winston Taki is here with the latest.
Thank you, Ken. Now, coming up in business, the business associations demand load sharing timetable to plan for power outages. We will hear from the Ghana National Chamber of Commerce and Industry, and International Monetary Fund reveals 9 domestic banks hold 40% of banking assets in Ghana. The business news on Newsnight is brought to you by MTN, Kingdom Books and Stationery, Syntex Tanks, and Pepsodent, Charcoal and Herbal. We have details after this break.
Je m'appelle.
Je m'appelle.
Je m'appelle.
Mappe. Et mappé. Hey, Asamo. French idiot. This is midi croissant.
Meet Ajah. She makes sobolone in a small shop in Kaswa. She's going places with MTN Ejumapa. Now, she's learning French kakra to teach her francophone customers indigenous recipes.
Watashi no namae wa.
Watashi no na. My boy.
Whoa. She's learning Japanese too? Watash. What? If you're a woman with a small business, join MTN Ejumapa today by dialing *5060# and enjoy 150 megabytes data, a lifestyle bundle for social media, free MTN to MTN calls every Monday, and an insurance cover. You will also gain access to expert training, discounts on digital tools, and financial support to grow the business of your dreams. Terms and conditions apply. MTN.
Son, we are so proud of you for setting up this hospital. I really love those hospital beds and waiting chairs. By the way, did you import them?
No, Dad, I didn't. I actually got them from Kingdom Books and Stationery right here in Ghana.
Wow. We also bought our office supplies, safes, executive desks, and chairs from Kingdom, and they gave us expert advice on how to set up our office.
Guys, that makes 3 of us. I also got our sofa and bedroom sets, plus our dining hall furniture for our new home from Kingdom.
Wow, Mom, that makes 4 of us. I usually get my stationery items from Kingdom. And my teacher also mentioned that our classroom furniture was provided by Kingdom.
So there you have it. Whenever you're thinking about setting up an office or acquiring furniture for your home, etc., Kingdom Books and Stationery should be your first port of call. With over 40 years experience in the industry, we stock and supply a wide variety of globally sourced office and home furniture, stationery and equipment. Visit our head office, Takweje, Osu near the Osu Cemetery, Tema near Community 4, Takoradi opposite Vijay Mays Plaza, Cape Coast University Bookshop, Spintex Road near Absa Bank, Atomic Centerpoint Mall, Winneba University Campus, KNUST, the University Bookshop, and Santasi in Kumasi. You can also visit our shop online, www.kingdomstoreonline.com. Hurry while stock lasts. For further inquiries, contact us on 050-162-0810 or 0302-764-101. Email info@kingdomgh.com. Kingdom Books and Stationery Limited, where quality and affordability is assured. Terms and conditions apply.
Cast your mind back to 2022. The prices were rising. The stress was high. Every liter of fuel felt like a sacrifice. Do you remember who stepped forward first? When others were comfortable with high prices, Star Oil chose you. We cut our own profits so you could keep your AC on, keep your engines running, and keep your life moving without the heavy burden. We gave you room to breathe when things felt tight. Because of you, our star savers, we became #1. Today, the pumps are a battleground. Others are finally cutting prices because they have to. But Star Oil, we do it because we want to. Don't just chase a price, remember a friendship. We were there for you then, and with new innovations coming your way, we are here for you now. Star Oil, still quality and affordable fuels for all.
If you want quality, this be where you belong. Hey, tough, hey, strong. Oh, gonna shout, sing the song. no break when the rain they fall. Still no shake. Builders they choose and plumbers they prove. Any project you they start.
Enjoy homemade taste of shito always with Didi Shito. Made with carefully selected ingredients, no preservatives, no colorants.
Preservative just helps us spice. That's how we taste. Spicy we eat.
Didi Shito, if you do need. This advert is FDA approved.
Every mosquito study run away.
This advert is FDA approved.
Welcome to the business news on News 9, brought to you by MTN, Kingdom Books and Stationery, Syntex Tanks, and Pepsodent, Charcoal and Herbal. My name is Winston Taki. Let's settle for the details. Business associations are calling for a load shedding timetable to help them better plan their operations amid recent power outages. This comes as the Minister for Energy and Green Transition, John Abdullah Janapo, announced a significant milestone in effort to stabilize the national power grid, confirming that two major generating units at the Akosombo hydroelectric power station are now back in operation following a substation fire. Speaking to Joy Business, Chief Executive of the Ghana National Chamber of Commerce and Industry, Mark Bidu-Abuaji, urged the sector minister to publish a clear timetable to guide businesses.
Since we don't know when this, I don't know whether it's Doomsaw or Doomsaw will end, I think for now, we need to go through a difficult situation. But I would have preferred, or the business community would have preferred, that looking at what is going on, if the Ministry of Energy and ECG, if they are aware, that's going to take at least additional 2 weeks, then I will ask for a timetable. There's nothing wrong giving us a timetable that within these days, this time and this period, your light will go off. So if you're a business person, then you can prepare and look for alternative. You don't have to play politics with this. Timetable guides you on when the light will go off and what you have to do. And for me, there's nothing wrong with that. But if you continue to just behave the way we are doing unannounced and it goes off, it comes sometimes within a day you can have about 3 or 4 outages.
Chief Executive of the Ghana National Chamber of Commerce and Industry, Mark Bidu-Abuaji. Away from the power sector, development in Ghana's banking industry are also drawing attention. Of the 23 universal banks operating in Ghana, 9 domestic banks control nearly 40% of total industry assets, while 14 foreign banks operate as subsidiaries of Pan-African and other international institutions. The following report has more.
According to a report by the International Monetary Fund Technical Assistance Mission, Ghana's financial system is predominantly bank-based. As of end of 2024, the banking sector assets accounted for over 3/4 of total financial sector assets, followed by pensions with 16%, and securities and insurance each with about 4%. Within banking, the report said more than 90% of assets were held by universal banks, with the remainder in specialized deposit-taking institutions such as savings and loans companies and rural community banks. The report added that the banking sector has been gradually recovering over the past year, but non-performing loans and sovereign exposures remain high. The report said following the 2022 domestic debt exchange program, banks incurred significant losses on domestic government bond holdings, which weakened their capital positions. Despite some improvements, the report added that the private sector non-performing loans ratio remains elevated at 20.8%, and banks continue to be highly exposed to domestic sovereign.
That was a News Desk report. In other business news, stakeholder engagement remains high on the agenda. The next edition of the Joy Business Roundtable discussion comes off on Thursday, April 30th at the Joy News Studios at 9 a.m. More details in the following report.
The program, which will be held on the topic Mahama at 16 months, do economic narratives match real sector outcomes, will have a panel consisting of Mark Beduabwaje, CEO of the Ghana Chamber of Commerce and Industry, Frederick Emisa, Technical Advisor at the Ministry of Finance, Professor Ejapoma Jekedako, Economist and Lecturer at the University of Ghana, Joseph Paddy, Vice President of the Ghana Union of Traders Association, Yao Appiah, Partner, Financial Advisory, Deloitte Ghana, and the CEO of Dalex Finance, Joe Jackson.
Make a date and join us on Thursday for this insightful discussion at 9 a.m. here on the Joy News channel. It's also be live on Joy 99.7 FM. Meanwhile, attention is also turning to tax compliance as the month draws to a close. As part of activities marking Tax and Good Governance Month, the Ghana Revenue Authority is urging taxpayers to fulfill their obligations before the end of April to avoid penalties. Speaking to journalists after a health walk to raise awareness, Acting Commissioner of the Domestic Tax Revenue Division, Martin Yamburiga, warned that defaulters will face penalties after the deadline.
And we use the month of April because the last day of April is the last day for the filing of income tax returns for individuals and companies whose financial year or basic period ends on 31st December each year. So what we have done today is just creating an awareness to let Ghanaians know the importance of paying their taxes. So we have done this under the theme, Know Your Taxes, Pay Your Taxes, Let Us Build Ghana Together. We appreciate the fact that the responsibility for the development of our country is a shared responsibility between government and citizens. Government can only get resources to develop the country if citizens are faithful or diligent in paying their taxes. So we just want everybody to know that it is very important for you to file and pay your taxes as required by the law.
That was Dr. Martin Yamburija, is Acting Commissioner for the Domestic Tax Revenue Division of the Ghana Revenue Authority. And that is all for Business on Newsline. My name is Winston Taki. Back to Kenneth and Gemma.
Thank you, Winston. Let's do more stories this evening.
Climate change is turning homes in Tamale into hazardous heat traps. In communities like Dako, traditional thatch housing, which naturally balances temperature, is being replaced by zinc-roofed structures with no ceilings and poor ventilation. For newborns whose bodies cannot yet regulate temperature, these indoor environments are increasingly life-threatening. Isaac Nunya has more in today's Climate Evidence.
Young mothers like Shahadatu Abdullahi are on the front lines. The sun produces so much heat that she does not know where to go. She says, pointing to the heat rashes covering a newborn.
The heat is too much. You see, even in the night, we can't sleep in this room unless outside. Sure. Even the child cry, he can't sleep in this room. The night, it will heat too much. You see, the way I'm sweating. So rashes is there, his legs.
The conditions are so grueling that Shahadatu has decided to avoid future pregnancies during the heat season. Mr. Solomon Atimberry, a climate and health researcher with the University of Public Health at the University of Development Studies, explains that newborn babies face physiological vulnerability because babies have high surface area to body mass ratio.
There is what we call the thermoregulation, the ability to thermoregulate. The baby's body is not developed. The glands that regulate body temperature and what have you, is not well developed to be able to absorb the environmental heat. So the body absorbs environmental heat faster than even adults.
This story is brought to you by Joy News in partnership with CDK in Ghana, University of Ghana Center for Climate Change and Sustainability Studies, with funding from Claire R4I Opportunities Fund.
You're still listening to Newsnight on Joy 99.7 FM in Accra and our numerous affiliates across the country. Nana Ekuamwa Boatin from Ablekuma Central says, I do not understand why this government seems to take pleasure in talking instead of getting on the ground to work. Our lives are heavily impacted by the current Dumsor crisis. The weak explanation given only makes the situation worse. Are they telling us that the mere replacement of transformers has led to nationwide Dumsor? This certainly cannot be the case. Furthermore, the decision to transfer district managers in the Ashanti region appears hollow. Are those district managers living in a different region where they are not affected by the Dumsor? This is a weak decision. And this is from August Kwabla Kotoka Dovlo from Keta. He says, I want to advise Ghanaians, let us pray both spiritually and physically for the restoration of power. We are all affected by the ongoing power crisis, so please let us remain vigilant and determined to protect our power generation stations in the country. Let us pray for the quick restoration of electricity. Cyril Kelvin Kukubo from Keta in the Volta region also says, the John Mahama administration is doing everything possible to rectify the problem in the energy sector, but the more he tries, the more some elements within the power sector also appear to be on a mission to sabotage his efforts. The earlier those elements are fished out, the better. Nana from Spintex Road says, interestingly, Ghanaians have gone past the campaign style of the MPP. They need more than Dumsor antics to bring them back to power. Some of us lived through President Kufuor's Dumsor timetable in this country. I guess Samia Uku was young then. Those are some of the messages you've been sending to our WhatsApp platform. Keep them coming in. And in other stories this evening, the Rent Control Department says it will start nationwide hostel inspections, warning landlords of sanctions over illegal fees. The move follows complaints from the National Union of Ghana Students about unfair rent hikes and landlords demanding excessive advance rent. In a statement, Rent Control says officers will check pricing and tenancy deals around major campuses. Landlords who break the law will face prosecution. Let's get on to the telephone lines right now and speak to Frederick Opoku, who is the acting rent commissioner. Mr. Opoku, welcome to the program. There are concerns that you've not even been able to deal with the fact that landlords in residential buildings are charging people 2 years rent advance, and now you're moving to hostels.
Oh, very well. Good evening, my brother. I hope you are doing great. I think the situation is like over the years,